Слышу вас хорошо, да.
Good morning once again from the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, and welcome for our deorbit burn and landing coverage for the 3 returning crew members, the Expedition 47 crew now flying free from the International Space Station. Everything is going according to plan, with countdown clocks ticking backward to the deorbit burn, a 4-minute, 37-second engine firing retrograde that will slow the Soyuz velocity down by 128 meters per second, allowing it to drop out of orbit to begin its descent back to Earth and a landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan. The deorbit burn is scheduled just over 21 minutes from now at 3:22 and 7 seconds Central Time, 4:22 a.m. Eastern Time. Everything is all set. All of the pre-landing preparations are in good shape. The Soyuz systems are functioning normally. The departing crew members who left the International Space Station earlier this morning, Tim Kopra of NASA, Tim Peake of the European Space Agency, and Soyuz Commander Yuri Malenchenko, wrapping up the 6th flight of his stellar career, and a total of 828 days in space over those 6 flights. They are strapped into their respective seats in the descent module of the Soyuz TMA-19M spacecraft. Much earlier on Friday night, the crew members got together at the hatchway to the Rosviet module of the International Space Station, to which the Soyuz had been docked since it arrived at the complex last December 15th. They bid 3 other crew members on board the station, the new Expedition 48 Commander Jeff Williams of NASA and his 2 Russian crewmates, Oleg Skripochka and Alexei Ovchinin, farewell. They closed the hatches behind them, the hatch closure occurring on the Soyuz side of the docking interface at 9:34 p.m. Central Time last night. The Rosviet hatch closed 1 minute later. The crew commenced a series of leak checks and then began to suit up in their Sokol launch and entry suits to begin final preparations for their departure from the station. The docking mechanism on the Soyuz spacecraft was powered up. The hooks holding the Soyuz in place at the Rosviet module docking port drove open, and then undocking occurred right on time at 12:52 a.m. Central Time, 1:52 a.m. Eastern Time, as the Soyuz and the International Space Station flew 254 miles above far eastern Mongolia. This is video taken as we saw it live several hours ago as the Soyuz departed from the Rosviet module. It slowly backed away with 2 separation burns, beginning a phasing away from the station for the Soyuz vehicle and setting the stage for the deorbit burn that is looming on the horizon about 18.5 minutes from now. As you can see from this video, the bulbous forward section of the Soyuz, called the orbital module, and the white section at the rear of the spacecraft, called the instrumentation and propulsion module. The crew is actually in the center section, called the descent module. They're strapped into their respective seats. Yuri Malenchenko in the center seat of the descent module as the Soyuz commander. On his left is NASA ISS Commander Tim Kopra, who just completed his stint on board the station as the Expedition 47 Commander, and strapped in the right seat as board engineer number 2 is Tim Peake of the European Space Agency, the first British astronaut to fly aboard the International Space Station. Those 3 crew members wrapping up 186 days in space, 2,976 orbits of the Earth in a mission that has spanned almost 79 million miles. After the two separation burns in this video replay, you can see a dramatic view of the Soyuz phasing away from the station with the moon serving as a backdrop. The Soyuz having passed now to a safe distance away from the station as everything is all set for the deorbit burn that is set to begin just 17 minutes from now. This view from a balcony camera looking at the Russian flight control team at the Russian Mission Control Center in the town of Korolyov outside of Moscow as they watch over their data and all of the systems on the Soyuz spacecraft as it prepares for the deorbit burn, the engine firing that will begin the trek home for Tim Kopra, Tim Peake, and Yuri Malenchenko. The deorbit burn, as mentioned before, is looming on the horizon here. That will enable the Soyuz spacecraft to begin its trek back into the atmosphere. Pyrotechnic devices will fire as the separation of the three sections of the Soyuz takes place. That will expose the descent module's heat shield to the fiery heat of reentry. And at that point, the Soyuz will be on track for its descent toward the landing site. It will first deploy a pilot parachute followed by a main parachute to significantly slow the rate of descent down for the Soyuz spacecraft and enable it to land after a final firing of braking rockets at the landing site. That touchdown expected at 4:14 and 39 seconds a.m. Central Time, which will be 3:14 and 39 seconds p.m. at the landing site in Kazakhstan, just 90 miles to the southeast of the remote town of Zhezkazgan. The departure of Kopra, Peake, and Malenchenko from the International Space Station leaves behind the three other crew members who are now the newly formed Expedition 48 crew. The commander of the International Space Station now for the second time is Jeff Williams of NASA. He took over command on Friday morning from Tim Kopra, joined by Alexei Ovchinin and Alex Gripochka of Roscosmos, who Williams launched with back on March 18th for their own 6-month mission aboard the orbital outpost. They will be a 3-man crew for the next 3 weeks, awaiting the arrival of the next trio of residents to the station, that consisting of NASA's Kate Rubins, Anatoly Ivanishin, and Takuya Onishi of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. They are scheduled to launch on the morning of July 7th from the Baikonur Cosmodrome, which would be the evening of July 6th here in the United States, for a 2-day rendezvous in the newly furnished and modified Soyuz MS-01 spacecraft that will experience a deliberate, planned 34-orbit or 2-day rendezvous to test all of the new upgraded systems in that Soyuz spacecraft, docking scheduled in the early morning hours of July 9th, and that will bring the station back to its normal complement of 6 people on board. In Kazakhstan, the search and recovery forces called Rosaviatsa from the Russian Defense Ministry and the civilian recovery forces, along with a group of NASA personnel and European Space Agency personnel, are all en route from Karaganda, Kazakhstan, the staging city for this morning's landing, to the landing site itself. Again, it's about a 2-hour helicopter ride from Karaganda to the landing site, which is located 90 miles to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan. The 8 Russian Mi-8 helicopters headed for the prime landing site will arrive at about the time that the Soyuz is descending toward the landing site under its orange and white main parachute. They on the ground already at the landing site, 4 all-terrain vehicles and Antonov fixed-wing aircraft. The larger of the 2 aircraft, the Antonov 26, will be the prime command and control center, relaying voice and data from the Soyuz spacecraft to the Russian flight control team in Korolyov at the Russian Mission Control Center. One by one, those Russian Mi-8 helicopters will land in a staggered pattern at the spacecraft to begin the work to extract the crew members following the touchdown of the Soyuz vehicle. The 3 crew members will be placed in comfortable chairs alongside the spacecraft, while other recovery personnel erect an inflatable medical tent nearby. That medical tent will be where the crew members are brought. They'll be carried in their chairs, having begun the recovery from 186 days of weightlessness. The tug of gravity against their bodies will be felt first when they begin to enter the Earth's atmosphere, a point called entry interface, where the crew will be at an altitude of about 62 miles above the Earth, that coming at about 28 minutes or so following the deorbit burn itself. The ballistics officers for the Russian flight control team at the Russian Mission Control Center have updated the coordinates for the landing site, calling for the Soyuz now to touch down at 47 degrees, 21 minutes, and 5 seconds north latitude, 69 minutes, 69 degrees, 38 minutes, 4 seconds east longitude. So just a very slight tweak to the landing coordinates that had been previously provided. The Soyuz expected to touch down right on time at 4:14 and 39 seconds a.m. Central Time, 3:14 and 39 seconds p.m. at the landing site in Kazakhstan, about 90 miles to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan.
Agate. This is MCC Moscow. How copy? Go ahead, this is Agate. So, Yuri, what do you see on the BZU display on the onboard recording unit? Delta V for descent is all zeros. The data and the separation and the time of the maximum G's and the longitude, they're all zeros, and the rotation is all zeros. We have the SUS settings on the display. We copy.
Russian flight controllers in Korolyov tagging up with Yuri Malenchenko, the Soyuz commander. Again, he is strapped into the center seat of the descent module, the centermost portion, the middle portion of the 3-section Soyuz spacecraft, the only one that survives the heat of reentry, of course. The other 2 segments of the Soyuz, the forward orbital module and the rear instrumentation and propulsion module, burn up in the Earth's atmosphere. Malenchenko in the center seat, flanked on his left by board engineer number 1, who is Tim Kopra of NASA, off-going ISS commander for Expedition 47. On Malenchenko's right is Tim Peake of the European Space Agency, who is wrapping up his first flight, 186 days in space. A couple of timed milestones to keep track of. That module separation will occur at 3:49 and 11 seconds a.m. Central Time at an altitude of almost 87 miles above the Earth. Again, the heat shield for the Soyuz will be exposed to repel the plasma that will build up around the spacecraft in temperatures of some 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. Once the Soyuz exits that plasma regime, where G-forces will build up to about 4 to 5 times the force of gravity against the crew, the heat shield will be jettisoned, exposing the altimeter at the base of the Soyuz vehicle that will compute altitude and rate of descent to the Soyuz computers as it targets its landing site to the southeast of Zhezkazgan. Atmospheric entry, or entry interface as it is known, is scheduled to occur at 3:52 a.m. Central Time, followed about a minute and a half later by the entry of the spacecraft into that plasma. Entry guidance will begin as the computers begin to update its position relative to the Earth and its track toward the landing site. The plasma experience for the crew will last about 5 minutes. They will exit from that plasma regime at about 3:58 a.m. Central Time, just 2 minutes before the command is issued to open up the parachutes. 2 pilot parachutes will first be deployed, the second of which extracts a drogue chute. That drogue chute is then released, measuring about 24 square meters, slowing the Soyuz down from a descent rate of 230 meters per second to just 80 meters per second. That will be followed, of course, by the main parachute deployment. That covers a wider area of some 1,000 meters, slowing the Soyuz down to a descent rate of just 7.2 meters per second. Its harnesses first allow the Soyuz to descend at a canted angle of about 30 degrees to expel heat, then shifts the Soyuz to a straight vertical descent toward the landing site for the firing of the soft landing engines, or the final braking rocket firing just a couple of feet off the ground, followed by touchdown itself. We're coming up on the 5-minute mark toward the deorbit burn. Everything again continuing to go as planned as Malenchenko, Peak, and Cobra stand by for the 4-minute, 37-second retrograde firing, a braking maneuver, if you will, to slow the Soyuz down by 128 meters per second, allowing it to drop out of orbit to begin its descent back into the Earth's atmosphere. Here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room, the team is led by Flight Director Courtney McMillan. She is presiding over this team of flight controllers who are working in concert with the flight control team at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov. Courtney McMillan is on the right side of your screen, joined on console by astronauts Jim Kelly and Sonny Williams, who's a member of the commercial crew program cadre of astronauts. Also, however, because of her vast experience on board the International Space Station, is as Soyuz systems expert, basically a second set of eyes on console this morning for the descent of Cobra, Peak, and Malenchenko through the atmosphere toward their landing site in Kazakhstan. coming up on the 2.5-minute mark toward the deorbit burn. The landing site in a very remote area to the southeast of Jezkazgan contains a number of genus of plants, including alliaceous types of plants, mostly barren area, though, specifically chosen in the ballistics trajectory of an entry and landing for a Soyuz spacecraft so as not to take it over any populated areas. Again, the Soyuz will be moving from southwest to northeast toward its landing site, arriving for a scheduled landing at 4:14 and 39 seconds a.m. Central Time, which is 3:14 p.m. at the landing site, a mid-afternoon landing just over 6 hours before sunset.
Agate, this is MCC Moscow. How copy? We did not copy your last, Moscow. It was unintelligible. Please continue monitoring. Inaudible.
Inside a minute now until the deorbit burn begins. 4-minute, 37-second retrograde firing of the Soyuz engines.
Go ahead. Escada cover is open and we sent the J3 command. 30 seconds till Escada main engine activation.
Ten seconds until the initiation of the deorbit burn. The crew will continue to give updates on the progress of the burn for its 4-minute, 37-second duration.
We confirm that Escada main engine performed the burn at the time indicated.
The deorbit burn is underway.
We see delta V of 0.48.
The deorbit burn beginning on time at 3:22 a.m. Central Time.
12 meters. Current V, delta V is 12 meters. At 11:22:53, it was 20 meters. 25 meters at 57 seconds. Schedule parameters are nominal and the delta V is constant.
The deorbit burn continues in good shape.
1:15. We have 34 meters. One minute, 30 seconds. We're at 40 meters. The prop conception is nominal and the delta V is nominal as well.
186 days after it launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome, the Soyuz TMA-19M is on its way home. The deorbit burn going very well so far. Search and recovery force personnel and NASA and European Space Agency personnel en route to the landing site. Just about halfway through the deorbit burn now. Everything continues to look very, very good. Good engine performance, good delta velocity.
At 2 minutes, 30 seconds, we have 68 meters. KDU parameters are nominal. At 2 minutes, 46 seconds, we are at 75 meters.
meters.
83 meters at 3 minutes.
Minutes 30 seconds, 96 meters.
96 meters at 3 minutes, 30 seconds.
All the numbers are good. So far, so good.
Метров, 3:59.
At 3:59 minutes, we are at 110 meters.
Everything is nominal so far with this deorbit burn, slowing the Soyuz down by 128 meters per second, a retrograde braking maneuver to enable the spacecraft to begin to descend into the Earth's atmosphere.
At 4:30, we're at 125 meters per second.
Standing by for the completion of the deorbit burn.
Thermal sensor is up.
The deorbit burn is complete and was executed in perfect fashion. Tim Kopra, Tim Peake, Yuri Malenchenko heading home toward a landing in south-central Kazakhstan.
We confirm that KSDU is open. We see that the pressure is dropping in the BO module.
That call signifying that the orbital module, the bulbous top portion of the three-section Soyuz spacecraft, is automatically being depressurized in preparation for the separation of the modules that will take place at 3:49 a.m. Central Time, exposing the descent module with the crew inside and its heat shield to begin to repel the heat of reentry.
I got it. This is FCC Moscow.
Агаты.
Go ahead. This is Agate.
Отработали 128 метров. ГК прошло заданное время.
GK went through at the required time, at the time set, and we confirm that we have reached delta V of 128 meters per second. In Moscow, we're not copying you very clearly. The systems are all nominal. How copy us now? Pretty good.
На формате уставки. Еще раз посмотрите уставки СУС.
Please check the SUS settings at the settings or Ustavki display. Copy and work.
This is Mission Control Houston. The deorbit burn again was executed on time at 3:22 a.m. Central Time. 4-minute, 37-second retrograde firing. The Soyuz TMA-19M and its trio of crew members on its way home for a landing coming up about 45 minutes from now in south-central Kazakhstan, southeast of the remote town of Jezkazgan. We may be experiencing some choppy communications, as is the case all the time with Soyuz entry at a range of about 31 miles away from the International Space Station. The geometry of the Soyuz VHF antennas to the space station's antennas for communication relay through the station itself is a bit distant, and so we may be losing communications from time to time, although the Russian flight controllers of the Russian Mission Control Center will continue to call the crew on a continuous basis for updated reports on how things are going on board the Soyuz vehicle. The next major event, once again, the separation of the three sections of the Soyuz vehicle. That's scheduled to occur at 3:49 a.m. Central Time, while the Soyuz is at an altitude of some 87 miles above the Earth.
Agata, this is Moscow. How do you read?
Once again, as we mentioned a moment ago, it is not uncommon for communications to be lost between the Russian control center in Korolyov and the crew on board the Soyuz because of the distance that the Soyuz is opening between itself and the International Space Station, and the geometry of the VHF antenna system on the Soyuz spacecraft itself. As the Soyuz gets much closer to its landing site, it will be acquired by the search and recovery forces who are in place around the landing site in an oval-shaped circular racetrack pattern. They will be able to pick up a radio beacon from the Soyuz vehicle, as well as the ability to communicate by voice from the Antonov fixed-wing aircraft that serve as relay stations, basically command and control stations over the landing site, supervising the movements and the choreography of Rosaviatsa, the search and recovery forces themselves. Those forces are being augmented, as always, by NASA personnel, and in this case, also by European Space Agency personnel who will be at the landing site, landing in a series of Russian Mi-8 helicopters that are en route from the staging city of Karaganda to the landing site to assist in the extraction of and the recovery of the crew.
Agata, this is Moscow. How do you read?
The call sign of Yuri Malenchenko's Soyuz spacecraft is Agat, and that is the call sign that the Russian flight controllers are calling up to the crew with.
Agata, this is Moscow. Do you read me? Yes, this is Agate. Read you loud and clear. Inaudible. You have the format? Yes, and nothing changed. Everything is the same. Inaudible? As I reported to you before, nothing has changed. Nothing. But you do have data? I did not copy. Do you have data on the set point display? Yes. I have the Zeus set point and also the landing angle 142.3 degrees. Very well, copy. You may close.
Flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center talking with Soyuz Commander Yuri Malenchenko, getting updates on the system's performance on board the Soyuz, which so far is rock solid following a 4-minute, 37-second deorbit burn that has resulted in the Soyuz velocity slowing down by 128 meters per second. The Soyuz will soon begin to descend toward the Earth's atmosphere. At that point, called entry interface, the crew will feel the first tug of gravity in 186 days since they were launched. The next event, as you see in this animation, is the separation of the three sections of the Soyuz at 3:49 a.m. Central Time. The Soyuz will descend toward the landing site and then, in sequential fashion, deploy a pilot parachute, a drogue chute, and then the large main parachute as it targets a landing some 90 miles to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan. Just a few seconds before touchdown, the soft landing engines, as they are called, or a final firing of the braking rockets will take place, and then the Soyuz will be back on Earth for the first time since it left the Earth on December 15th of last year. "37 minutes now until the anticipated touchdown of the Soyuz TMA-19M. As mentioned earlier, communications become somewhat choppy between the crew on board and the Russian flight control team in Korolyov. The communications should improve later in the descent phase of this return to Earth for Kopra, Peak, and Malenchenko as the Soyuz approaches its landing site and comes within range of contact with the Rosaviatsa Russian Search and Recovery Forces Antonov fixed-wing aircraft. following Friday morning's change of command ceremony in which Expedition 47 Commander Tim Kopra of NASA handed over command of this International Space Station to NASA's Jeff Williams. The crew took a nap for several hours and then were awakened early Friday evening to begin landing preparations. The departing crew members, Kopra, Peak, and Malenchenko, said farewell to their three colleagues, Williams, Ovchinin, and Skripochka, and closed the hatch to the Soyuz vehicle at 9:34 p.m. Central Time. That was followed a minute later by the closing of the hatch to the Rassvet module, the docking port to which the Soyuz had been attached since December 15th. The departing crew conducted a series of leak checks, both in the docking interface between the Soyuz and the International Space Station, as well as internally within the descent module itself, before donning their Russian Sokol launch and entry suits and conducting final systems checks with the Russian Control Center personnel. With all of that having been completed, the Soyuz docking mechanism was powered up. The hooks were opened that held the Soyuz to the Rassvet docking port. Undocking of the Soyuz occurred at 12:52 a.m. Central Time, 1:52 a.m. Eastern Time, as the Soyuz and the International Space Station flew 252 statute miles over far eastern Mongolia. Two separation burns began an opening rate for the Soyuz to move and phase away from the International Space Station. That culminated in the initiation of the deorbit burn at 3:22 a.m. Central Time, 4:22 a.m. Eastern Time. That burn lasted 4 minutes and 37 seconds and was perfectly executed. We're 32 and a half minutes away from the anticipated landing of the Soyuz in south-central Kazakhstan. The next major event is coming up in about 7 minutes. That will be the pyrotechnic separation of the three sections of the Soyuz spacecraft.
This is Moscow. Do you read me?
At the landing site in south-central Kazakhstan, the report from the Russian Control Center is that the search and recovery forces are in position, ready to await the arrival of the Soyuz vehicle and its three occupants. A series of Russian Mi-8 helicopters are approaching the landing site at this hour. They will be circling around the landing site in a pre-prescribed pattern to await the view of the Soyuz under its large orange and white parachute.
Agate, this is Moscow. Separation complete. F3 command sent from the command panel.
We're about 4 minutes or so away from the anticipated separation of the three sections of the Soyuz. Again, this is designed to enable the heat shield on the base of the Soyuz spacecraft to face in the direction of travel and repel the heat as the Soyuz enters the plasma regime. That entry into the plasma and its exit from the plasma, that elapsed time is about 5 minutes of exposure to peak heating. Once the Soyuz emerges from that area of peak heating, it will jettison the heat shield, exposing the base of the Soyuz, which has an altimeter and other instrumentation that will feed the Soyuz onboard computers, altitude information, and its range toward the touchdown site in south-central Kazakhstan, as well as its rate of descent. You can see again in the animation the deployment of the parachute, first a pilot chute and a drogue chute. That's followed by the main parachute deployment that is scheduled to take place right at the top of the hour at 4 a.m. Central Time. The soft landing engines then fire just a few feet above the ground in a final computerized maneuver that eases the rate of descent for the crew members who are on their backs, strapped into the descent module, the only section of the Soyuz that returns home. We now have confirmation through the Russian control center that we have the separation of the three sections of the Soyuz. That occurred right on time. The module separation occurring at a point above the Earth, some 87 miles in altitude. Time to touchdown, 25 minutes. Yuri Malenchenko reporting from the Soyuz that the module separation was nominal. In about 2 minutes, the Soyuz will hit entry interface, the upper reaches of the Earth's atmosphere at an altitude of some 62 miles. That will be the point at which the 3 crew members will feel the first pull of gravity against their bodies since their launch back on December 15th. "23 minutes until touchdown. The Russian Mi-8 helicopters with personnel from NASA, the European Space Agency, and Rosaviatsa, the search and recovery force team itself. They are the 8 prime Mi-8 helicopters are approaching the landing site in Kazakhstan. They'll all be in place, airborne, awaiting the sight of the Soyuz under its orange and white parachute. Once the Soyuz touches down, those helicopters will then land in fairly rapid and sequential fashion to begin the process of getting the personnel around the Soyuz itself and the process of opening the hatch to extract the crew members. Just about 21 minutes until touchdown. The Soyuz now in the reaches of Earth's atmosphere. And in fact, the plasma should be building up around the spacecraft. The Soyuz at an altitude of some 50 miles above the Earth. Its guidance taking it toward a nominal landing some 90 miles to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan.
Inaudible.
Intermittent communications being heard by the Russian flight control team in Korolyov from the crew. Again, this is not unusual, and that communications link should improve as the Soyuz approaches the landing site and establishes its communications capability with the Rosaviatsa search and recovery forces. the Soyuz TMA-19M spacecraft and its 3 occupants currently barreling through the area of peak heating. Their exit from this plasma regime will come just about 2 minutes from now. The crew will be pulling about 4 to 5 times the force of gravity against their bodies as they move toward the landing site. The command to open the parachutes on the Soyuz expected right at the top of the hour, about 4 minutes from now. "17 minutes until the Soyuz landing in Kazakhstan. This will wrap up 186 days in space for Tim Kopra, Tim Peake, and Yuri Malenchenko, a mission spanning 2,976 orbits of the Earth, a journey of some 78.7 million miles. Yuri Malenchenko ending the 6th flight of his career. He will have totaled 828 days in space, second on the all-time list, just behind fellow cosmonaut Gennady Padalka. Tim Kopra's 2 flights will have accrued 244 days in space, and of course Tim Peake on this, his first flight into space, 186 days.
Agate, this is Moscow. How do you read us? We have 4.2 and have controlled descent. Guys, how do you feel and what's the pressure in the SI? 695 and plus 3 seconds. And we feel good. Copy. Thank you.
And that a report from Yuri Malenchenko, all well aboard the Soyuz.
And we think that you are doing great. We wish you a soft landing. Thanks.
And that is the sound of the radio beacon on the Soyuz spacecraft that is sending signals to the search and recovery forces at the landing site in Kazakhstan. We're coming up on the command to open the parachutes. Again, 2 pilot parachutes will first be deployed, the second of which extracts a drogue chute, followed shortly thereafter by the release of the main parachute.
And the G loads are decreasing. Standing by.
This is Mission Control Houston, just 14 minutes away from touchdown. Everything going well, according to the last report a moment ago from Soyuz Commander Yuri Malenchenko. Standing by for confirmation of chute deployment.
And we see that the SR pressure is dropping. And the descent module, the pressure is dropping. Agadi, how copy?
Здравствуйте. Рада вас слышать. Все нормально.
We're glad to hear you, guys. Everything's fine on board.
Приняли, спасибо.
We copy, thank you.
Можно притягиваться потихоньку.
Please strap yourself tighter.
Хорошо приняли, ожидаем.
We copy you, we're standing by.
"12 minutes until touchdown, and although we haven't heard a verbal confirmation, it should be assumed that the parachutes have been deployed. The crew, of course, reporting it's in great shape. This is Mission Control Houston, 11 minutes until touchdown of the Soyuz TMA-19M spacecraft. The search and recovery forces are on scene at the landing site, some 90 statute miles to the southeast of the town of Jezkazgan. We are awaiting confirmation, visual confirmation, confirming that the search and recovery forces and the helicopters and the Antonov fixed-wing aircraft are in fact within visual contact with the Soyuz.
Unintelligible and inaudible.
Everything, however, appears to be going as planned in a nominal descent from orbit to wrap up this 186-day mission.
Unintelligible, we're feeling fine.
We can see on the front screen at the Russian Mission Control Center the Soyuz descending under its parachute. We're waiting for this signal to be locked up for distribution for us. A nominal descent by the Soyuz toward its landing site.
Agadi?
And there is our view of There is the Soyuz TMA-19M. For those of us just joining our broadcast, we are just 8.5 minutes away from touchdown. A good view of the Soyuz spacecraft descending under its parachute. Everything has gone by the book all the way from hatch closure last night to the undocking earlier this morning to the deorbit burn that took place not quite 48 minutes ago. We're now under 8 minutes until touchdown. The search and recovery forces are in place, flying in a circular pattern around the landing site. On the ground, the RSC Energia technical personnel and other support personnel are in place in all-terrain vehicles, waiting for touchdown that is expected to occur just about 7.5 minutes from now. Yuri Malenchenko, the Soyuz commander, having reported a short time ago that the crew is feeling well and that everything has gone normally with the Soyuz's return from orbit.
One 45, 1.5. Unintelligible.
The Soyuz spacecraft darting through several banks of clouds over the landing site. Time to touchdown just over 6 minutes. Again, that is a radio beacon from the Soyuz TMA-19M relaying a radio signal and other telemetry to the Antonov fixed-wing aircraft for the search and recovery forces that are flying in the vicinity of the landing site, acting as a relay source for the data to be received by the Russian flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow. And emerging from another deck of clouds, there is the parachute, the familiar large orange and white parachute. This main parachute covers an area of about 1,000 meters, slowing the Soyuz to a descent rate of some 7.2 meters per second. Just a few feet off the ground, the soft landing engines will fire in a final braking maneuver, and the Soyuz and its crew will be home. Having launched 186 days ago in a journey that has spanned almost 79 million miles over almost 3,000 orbits of the Earth, the Soyuz is less than 4 minutes away from touchdown. The Russian Mi-8 helicopters have also established visual contact with the Soyuz as it approaches its landing site. Time to touchdown about 3 minutes. It is 3:12 in the afternoon in Kazakhstan as we near the end of the mission of this crew that launched back on December 15th, part of Expedition 46 initially, and then in March transitioning to Expedition 47 under the command of NASA's Tim Kopra. On board the International Space Station, the 3 Expedition 48 crew members, the new station commander Jeff Williams of NASA and his 2 Russian crewmates Oleg Skropochka and Alexei Ovchinin are also watching this same view that you're watching of the Soyuz descending to the landing site, the video being fed up to the International Space Station.
We're past 1 kilometer mark.
Just about a minute until touchdown, and you can see one of the Russian Mi-8 helicopters flying in the vicinity with good visual observation of the Soyuz.
Copy.
The Soyuz nearing its touchdown point southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan. And we're standing by for touchdown. The Soyuz is home. Touchdown confirmed at 4:15 a.m. Central Time, 3:15 p.m. at the landing site in Kazakhstan. Tim Kopra, Tim Peake, and Yuri Malenchenko are back on Earth after 186 days in space, the same number of days aboard the International Space Station. The Soyuz has landed. Again, landing confirmed at 4:15 a.m. Central Time, 3:15 p.m. at the landing site southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan.
Unintelligible.
As the ground-based search and recovery forces make their way toward the spacecraft, we'll find out before long whether or not it landed upright or whether or not the wind against the parachute might have dragged the Soyuz onto its side, which is not uncommon. It will take a few minutes for the search and recovery teams to make their way toward the proximity of the spacecraft and begin the task of opening up the hatch and extracting the crew. Once again, to recap, the Soyuz glided to a parachute-assisted landing right on target to a point southeast of the town of Jezkazgan in Kazakhstan, landing occurring at 4:15 a.m. Central Time, 3:15 p.m. at the landing site. We are awaiting further reports from the landing site as the search and recovery forces make their way toward the spacecraft, which again landed at 4:15 a.m. Central Time, 3:15 p.m. in Kazakhstan. This is Mission Control Houston confirmation now from the search and recovery forces that the Soyuz landed on its side. The wind pulled the Soyuz over onto its side instead of landing upright. This is no issue. This is a fairly routine occurrence. The search and recovery forces are now making their way around the spacecraft so that they can secure the spacecraft, make sure that all of its systems are safed before they begin the process of opening up the hatch and extracting the crew. Again, the Soyuz landing on its side. This is Mission Control Houston. We are awaiting video to be reestablished from the landing site as the search and recovery teams and the television crews associated with the search and recovery forces make their way toward the Soyuz spacecraft. It landed at 4:15 a.m. Central Time, 3:15 p.m. 3:15 p.m. Kazakhstan time, at a point about 90 miles to the southeast of the town of Jezkazgan. The entire entry of the Soyuz and its three crew members on board was totally normal. The deorbit burn was executed in flawless fashion, and all of the major milestones during the descent, the separation of the modules, the entry into Earth's parachutes all occurred right on time with no issues associated with any of those events. Soyuz Commander Yuri Malenchenko strapped into the center seat of the descent module, flanked on his left by Tim Kopra of NASA and on his right by Tim Peake of the European Space Agency, reported that the crew was feeling well. And the search and recovery forces informed us a few minutes ago that the Soyuz did in fact land on its side, and that technicians are around the spacecraft beginning the initial preparations for the opening of the hatch and the extraction of the crew. This view from a balcony camera looking at the large flight control room at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov outside Moscow. Those flight controllers in charge of Soyuz operations as we await further word from the landing site, as well as what we expect will be additional video of the securing of the spacecraft and the extraction of the crew. And now video has been reestablished from the landing site. A good view of Yuri Malenchenko, the Soyuz commander. And Tim Peake, the first British astronaut to fly on the International Space Station. Peake completing his first mission. Malenchenko completing 6 flights into space and a total of 828 days away from the planet, second most on the all-time list behind fellow cosmonaut Gennady Padalka. A nice sunny afternoon on a Saturday in south-central Kazakhstan as the landing occurred right on target. The crew now being attended to by flight surgeons and nurses, which is a standard procedure as they have an opportunity to get their land legs back.
I will add more.
Yeah, I can give you a yeah, small.
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, very good. It was incredible. Yeah, it was real right. Best ride I've been on ever. It's just been fantastic from start to finish.
Tim, David Truckman over here. David Truckman, welcome back to planet Earth.
Thank you, David.
Great to see you looking so well. Just tell me how you're feeling right now.
Just truly elated. I mean, just the smells of Earth are so strong. Yeah, it's just wonderful to be back, the fresh air. Really good. I look forward to seeing the family now, definitely. Definitely. Just, I mean, it's a life-changing experience. It's overwhelming, really, to be up there for 6 months and to see everything and experience everything. It was just truly incredible. Yeah. I'm going to miss the view, definitely. Yeah.
Tim, you said you were looking forward to some rain on your session. You've got a brilliant sunny day instead.
I'd love some cool rain right now. It's very, very hot. In the capsule was very hot, and in the suit's very hot. So, yeah, some cool rain right now would be lovely.
I think so.
That's a good question. I think I might be having some pizza later, and maybe a cold beer as well.
Tim, a lot of people have described this.
Good view of Yuri Malenchenko back home, back on Earth, having completed the 6th flight in his long career.
Let's skip the show.
And the search and recovery forces now extracting Tim Kopra from the Soyuz spacecraft.
Leg. We're holding him, holding him. Okay, move back, move back. Congratulations. Right here. Where are you taking him? Raise the legs up. Okay, everyone's doing their job.
Doc, if you want the fan connect.
All 3 crew members now out of the Soyuz vehicle.
It's going. Is that good?
I think it's connected already.
Is it blowing? It's all good? It's all good. Okay, I'm gonna take this off. Hello, hello. Separation 93.
Okay. Sure. We do have some.
Continuing to receive video from the landing site in Kazakhstan, southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan. Yuri Malenchenko, Tim Peak, Tim Kopra, all out of the Soyuz vehicle. The Soyuz landing at 4:15 a.m. Central Time, 3:15 p.m. at the landing site. It was pulled over onto its side, not uncommon. But the search and recovery forces were around the capsule very quickly to begin the process of opening up the hatch and extracting the crew. This is Mission Control Houston. At the landing site, NASA Public Affairs Officer Dan Hewitt is standing by. Dan, it looks like a beautiful afternoon for a landing. Can you give us a quick update on how things look and how the crew is doing?
Yeah, sure thing, Rob. I don't think I've ever seen better weather than what we have right now. It's mid to high 70s. We got a nice breeze going, and all the teams got out here. We actually got to see the capsule touchdown, the soft landing jets fire, and that's something that I'm never going to forget in my life. That was just phenomenal to see. As you can see on the video, all three crew members are out of the capsule. Yuri Malenchenko first, Tim Peake second, and Tim Kopra third. Last but not least, all three in the chairs now. They're going to, I think, enjoy the weather, their first breath of fresh air in over 6 months before we head over to the medical tent, which is already erected just about 100 yards away or so.
Dan, you know, as is customary for these landings, the crew undergoes some medical tests in that nearby inflatable medical tent. Can you give us sort of a synopsis as to what the next hour or so, 2 hours, lies ahead for the crew as they prepare to return to Karaganda?
Yeah, sure thing. So they're going to, like you just said, head off to the medical tent in just a little while, and basically they'll just get a chance to acclimate a little bit more, change out of their SOCA launch and entry suits into some more comfortable clothing, and then all of the flight docs, the flight surgeons, who you can already see hard at work, along with these landing nurses, will take some preliminary data takes, just check their vitals, all the basics, before they all get loaded up into their own individual helicopters. Like I said, all the teams made it out here successfully on time. Each of these three crew members is bound for Karaganda in just a little while from now, at which point they're going to head back to their respective home bases. Yuri Malenchenko making his way back to the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center, and then Tim Kopra and Tim Peake on their way, for Kopra back to Houston, for Peake he's going to get off in Bodo, Norway, and then head back to Cologne with his ESA counterparts. And as I'm sure you're seeing right now, the crew members are already heading towards the medical tent. Yuri Malenchenko, the second most veteran crew member of all time, second on the all-time list for space, making his way over now. Tim Peake shortly behind him, and then Tim Kopra, again, he's going to be the third one heading out. He's going to be making his way in just a moment from now.
And Dan, it sure looked like a very stable descent for the Soyuz. We saw it almost all the way down under the parachutes. It sure appears as if it was almost a bullseye landing.
Yeah, I mean, it was just real picturesque. And there goes Kopra right now. We were able to see it in the helicopters almost the entire way down under chute. And like I said, able to see those soft landing engines and everything fire. And that was just unreal to see, you know, from a helicopter just a few hundred feet away.
Well, Dan, thanks very much. Enjoy that weather. It's not often that we experience temperatures around 80 degrees Fahrenheit, but everything appeared to go by the book, and we'll await further reports from you when you get back with the crew in Karaganda.
Yep, and we'll be heading there soon. Like we said, all the crew members now off to the medical tent, so they'll get their checkouts, and then we'll be heading home soon enough. So always good talking to you, Rob, and that's going to do it for me from here out in Kazakhstan.
Thanks very much, Dan. That's NASA Public Affairs Officer Dan Hewitt with the search and recovery forces and the NASA personnel at the landing site to the southeast of Zhezkazgan, where the Soyuz TMA-19M spacecraft made a bullseye landing not quite 30 minutes ago or so. A good view of Tim Copra as he is being assisted with a wave toward the inflatable medical tent nearby. And as you heard from Dan, the crew will undergo some preliminary medical tests, which is par for the course, get out of their launch and entry suits into more comfortable flight clothing. Then they'll board individual helicopters, 3 of the Russian Mi-8 helicopters that made its way down to the landing site. They will board those helicopters and fly back, about a 2-hour flight back to Karaganda, the staging city, where there will be a short welcoming ceremony. And then the crew will board individual planes. Copra and Peak will board a NASA jet standing by at the Karaganda airport to fly back from Karaganda to Bodo, Norway. Malenchenko will board a Gagarin cosmonaut training aircraft to fly back to Star City. Peak will get off in Norway, and he will transfer to a European Space Agency plane that's at the Bodo airport, and will fly to Cologne, Germany, and a return to the European Astronaut Center. And there is the descent module being attended to by RSC Energia and search and recovery personnel. There is a small amount of cargo that will be unloaded from the spacecraft, all the spacecraft systems in the process of being safed. But the most important thing, of course, is that the crew is hale and hearty, back home on Earth after 186 days in space. There is a view of the all-terrain vehicles, part of the search and recovery forces that bring personnel to the landing site in what amounts to about a 24-hour drive from Karaganda to the landing site itself. And there you see the search and recovery personnel maneuvering the Soyuz descent module back to an upright position after it landed and then was pulled onto its side. Not uncommon. And a good view of the expansive main parachute for the Soyuz. This ultimately will be folded up and returned to technicians for RSC Energia for post-flight inspection, as is the descent module itself. Some of the systems in the avionics of these Soyuz vehicles are reflown. The module itself will undergo a detailed post-flight inspection and analysis for further data collection by the engineers back in Moscow.
What? Well, I doubt it. It's hard to find out. No, it's practically... Okay, guys, let's lift it up. Let's lift up the platform.
And you're seeing video of some of the operations taking place at the landing site. Again, the Soyuz touching down at 4:15 a.m. Central Time, 3:15 p.m. at the landing site. Within minutes, members of the search and recovery forces, as well as technicians, made their way to the spacecraft, which landed on its side. They began the process of opening up the hatch, quickly extracted the crew. Within just a few minutes, all three crew members were out in chairs nearby the spacecraft to have an opportunity to get their land legs back. They've all been hoisted on those chairs and brought into a nearby inflatable medical tent for initial medical tests and an opportunity to get out of those Russian so-called launch and entry suits and into more comfortable flight clothing. They will board 3 separate helicopters for a 2-hour flight back to the staging city of Karaganda, where they will participate in a short Kazakh traditional welcoming ceremony before boarding planes, Kopra and Peak boarding a NASA jet, Malenchenko to board a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft to go their separate ways.
Good, I mean, I think go there. You got this guy doing his. We need 60 seconds. Okay.
There's going to be an interview here. Yeah, the red one there. Let's leave the tool here for now.
Sean Fuller, the NASA Director of Human Spaceflight Operations in Russia, you saw just a moment ago, along with Kenny Todd, who's the International Space Station Program Manager for Integration and Operations. They are by the Soyuz descent module. There will be a few items belonging to NASA that were brought back from the International Space Station that will be collected. Now you're looking at cosmonaut Valery Korzun, who is a top executive at the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center in Star City.
The deployment of the helicopter and the landing was practically at the same time as the planned. The deviation from the calculated point was about 8 kilometers. The descent module landed on its side. Then the crew was taken out quite quickly. First, was taken out the fastest, the second one was taken a little slower, and then the third took a little longer, so everything took a little bit of time. Now the cosmonauts are in the tent, they are taking off the suits. In this time, this was the first time that we used the ventilation devices, and we are evaluating their effectiveness to determine how well these fans work in the field. Are they sufficient or not? As you see, the weather is good. The low level of the clouds was about 1,500 meters. I was in the helicopter, and when the beacon worked of the descent module, the helicopter was quickly see the parachute, and the helicopter tracked the descent module all the way to the bottom. On the ground, all the tools are set up in a way to see everything that is happening, and we were able to succeed and take the crew out of the module. There will not be any tests, and so I think that within an hour the crew will be ready to be taken out. We will also look at the urgent cargo items that need to be taken out of the descent module. They are feeling well, both the crews, cosmonauts and astronauts. Yuri Malenchenko has never complained of his descent, so despite his pale complexion, he feels well. What about Timothy Peake? Timothy Peake feels good. I would say that Malenchenko is number 1, Tim Peake is number 2, and Tim Kopra is in third place in terms of how he feels. And this is normal because the descent module turned around many times during the deployment of the parachute, during the G-loads. So, of course, when landing, they look a little green. So they may look a little disoriented. I asked Yuri how he felt about his landing in terms of the hardness. He said it was average as compared to the previous ones, not extra hard, not extra soft, but giving the wind speed, which was at times 8 meters per second, of course, the crew did feel the impact upon landing. And once the impact worked, there was a bit of a firing, and I did see the grass burning thanks to the descent thrusters. Thank you so much. My name is Valery Grigorьевич Kurzon. Thank you very much. I am from the GCTC Training Center for Crew Training.
Again, cosmonaut Valery Korzun, a veteran of space station flights himself, providing a synopsis of the landing and the extraction of the crew at the landing site in south-central Kazakhstan. The crew is in the medical tent nearby. As is customary, they're changing into comfortable flight suits before they are moved towards individual helicopters for a 2-hour flight back to the staging city of Karaganda.
I wrote down the pressure. Now it's the opposite. Greetings. Say hey hey. Everything's gonna be good. Let me stand like this.
And there is the inflatable medical tent in which the 3 crew members and their flight surgeons and other nurse medical personnel are attending to the crew as they help the crew out of their so-called launch and entry suits. Now we are seeing replays of the descent of the Soyuz spacecraft. This taken from one of the search and recovery helicopters in close proximity to the vehicle as it descended under its parachute. Again, this is a replay of the landing, the descent of the Soyuz TMA-19M spacecraft and its landing in south-central Kazakhstan, landing occurring 45 minutes ago. Once it touched down, the Soyuz was pulled onto its side, but the crew was quickly extracted and placed in comfortable chairs nearby the descent module before being carried into the inflatable medical tent nearby. For those of you watching on NASA television, this is a replay of the descent of the Soyuz TMA-19M spacecraft with Tim Kopra, Tim Peake, and Yuri Malenchenko on board, as shot from one of the forward-placing search and recovery helicopters that flew nearby the Soyuz during the final phase of its descent from orbit. Landing occurring at 4:15 a.m. Central Time, 3:15 p.m. at the landing site in Kazakhstan. We should get a good view of those soft landing engines firing just a second or two from now. And there it was at 4:15 a.m. Central Time, 3:15 p.m. Kazakhstan time. The Soyuz soft landing engines firing just a few feet off the ground, with the three crew members, Kopra, Peak, and Malenchenko, back on Earth after 186 days.
I guess they feed the, well,
And back to a replay of the initial moments following the landing of the Soyuz spacecraft. That smoke is commonplace from the soft landing engines that fire from the base of the Soyuz vehicle, and now we're fast forwarding, and you're looking at the initial members of the search and recovery forces, the team that initially makes its way to the spacecraft to begin the process of safing the vehicle, opening the hatch, and extracting the crew. Good view of the parachute, and you can hear in the background the Russian Mi-8 helicopters landing in sequential fashion around the perimeter of the landing zone.
1 and 2. A little more.
The spacecraft is rolled into an orientation that provides them access to the hatchway, so that they can use a special tool to open the hatch.
Help us, guys.
And remove the crew. Malenchenko in the center seat was extracted first, followed by Peak. Tim Kopra was third in line.
Okay, spread out a little bit. A little wider. I already put it together, it's ready. Come on, the hatch. Ready? Report on your health. Yuri Ivanovich, please report on the health of the crew. Yuri Ivanovich, please prepare the ODF for transport. Getting ready to open the hatch.
This is Mission Control Houston. Once again, you're looking at replays of the landing and the early post-landing activities following the touchdown of the Soyuz TMA-19M. That occurred at 4:15 a.m. Central Time, almost an hour ago.
Greetings. It's all good? Okay, next. It's all good? It's okay? Put them in the bag, guys. The corridor. Okay, move back, make a corridor. Okay, everyone stand up, move away. Yuri, can you pull out the spare gloves? The spare gloves. It's inconvenient right now. Okay, that's fine. Later. It's fine. Later. Okay, take it away. Any comments about the landing? Everything is good? Okay, let's get ready.
Once again, you're watching a replay of activities that occurred not quite an hour ago following the textbook touchdown of the Soyuz TMA-19M spacecraft southeast of Jezkazgan, Kazakhstan. The spacecraft landed at 4:15 a.m. Central Time, 3:15 p.m. Local Kazakhstan time at the landing site. And now, as part of these replays being provided to us by Roscosmos, you're watching the work being done by the search and recovery forces and the technical teams from RSC Energia to extract the crew from the spacecraft's descent module.
Just step away, just one step away. Okay, careful, his legs. Okay, 1-3. Turn him. You got him? Okay, help. Yes, help him. Okay, where's the case? I don't see where your case is. Okay, 1 second. And yourself? Okay, let's look here. Okay, now someone else with me in it. Okay, it's done.
This is Mission Control Houston. That'll wrap up all of the replays of the landing and the initial phase of the post-landing activities. Just to recap, the Expedition 47 trio of Tim Kopra of NASA, Tim Peake of the European Space Agency, and Yuri Malenchenko of Roscosmos undocked from the International Space Station early this morning, deorbited and glided to a bullseye touchdown in south-central Kazakhstan, landing occurring at 4:15 a.m. Central Time, 3:15 p.m. at the landing site in Kazakhstan. Their Soyuz spacecraft, after landing, rolled over onto its side, but the crew was quickly extracted by representatives of the Russian search and recovery forces. The crew, looking well, was brought in their respective chairs into a nearby inflatable medical tent where they are undergoing some preliminary medical tests, as is par for the course, getting out of their Russian launch and entry suits into more comfortable flight clothing. They will board individual helicopters for a 2-hour flight back to the staging city of Karaganda, Kazakhstan, where they will participate in a brief traditional Kazakh welcoming ceremony. And then Kopra and Peake will board a NASA plane outbound from Karaganda to Bodo, Norway, where they'll drop off Tim Peake. He will board an European Space Agency plane to fly from Bodo to Cologne, Germany, and the European Astronaut Center. Kopra will continue on with a NASA team of support personnel to the Johnson Space Center in Houston. Malenchenko will be boarding a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft in Karaganda for the flight back to Chkalovsky Airfield, right outside of the Cosmonaut Training Center in Star City, Russia. A mission that began for this trio back on December 15th with their launch from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan ends today after 186 days in space, almost 3,000 orbits of the Earth, a journey of almost 79 million miles. Peak, Kopra, Malenchenko back on Earth safely, in good shape, heading home to their respective domiciles. Everything going well in the post-landing phase of safing the spacecraft and getting the crew back to the staging city of Karaganda, Kazakhstan. We'll wrap up with a programming note. You can follow all of the activities on the International Space Station on our website at www.nasa.gov/station. And on Monday, June 20th, Space Station Live will air at 10 a.m. Central Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, with all of the latest activities of the 3 remaining crew members right now on board the station, who are now the Expedition 48 crew under the command of NASA's Jeff Williams, along with Russian crewmates Oleg Skripochka and Alexei Ovchinin. Again, Space Station Live to air on Monday at 10 a.m. Central Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. In the meantime, thank you for joining us throughout the night for the return of the Expedition 47 crew back on Earth safely after 186 days in space. Have a great weekend, and thanks for watching from Mission Control in Houston.